Welcome back, everybody. This topic is an important one, and I put it off a little too long, so we're covering it today. Because trans people, well, we like fighting for their rights, right? We like to say trans rights. We like to talk about how trans people, trans kids, trans everybody needs to be protected. Because trans identity is more targeted now than ever. But the fact is, trans people are losing their rights at a rapid rate. And it's quite problematic. One of the areas where it might be the most disgusting trampling of trans people's right to safety is within the prison system. There is a set of protections called PREA, essentially allowing for protections for trans people to avoid and seek justice if they are sexually assaulted or raped or just generally subjected to battery while they are in prison or jail. Republicans are looking to repeal these protections, leaving trans people to be thrown to the wolves. I've had a few people really wanting me to talk about this, and I figured today's the day. So if you guys want to learn about this, it's very important that we all get brushed up on this info. Then leave a like down below so YouTube actually pushes this video out and people become aware. Not a lot of people are talking about this. Comment down below. It also helps. Subscribe if you want to see more from me and you're new here. Ring the bell icon too, and join the Discord if you haven't already, linked down below. That's my fan Discord, main hub of my community and all that. I hope to see you around. But without any further ado, let's get right into it.
It's all about prison rape, so let's see if the algorithm treats this well. People need to hear it. Please double tap support to get out if you believe the department.
Yeah, it's gonna take a lot of support from you guys to fight the algorithm on this topic. The algorithm's gonna fight real hard to keep this video suppressed.
Department of Justice, should you know, enforce the law.
Hold on, let me actually turn up the volume. This is pretty quiet. There we go. Might actually still be quiet. I should boost it too. No vidIQ, get out of here. Alright, let's resume.
On prison rape, you're not going to like this. A leaked DOJ memo is basically telling people to start looking the other way on prison rape, specifically when the person most likely to be raped is trans or intersex. Because and they're doing it under a law literally called the Prison Rape Elimination Act, or PREA. You can't make this up. I'm Sean Southworth of Southworth.
Yeah. This is what people have been asking me to talk about this for a week, or for weeks now. In fact, this has always been the plan for Republicans. I've been saying this for years now, that as red states start to elect more radical Republican local leaders that push for these criminalizing transness policies, that it's going to keep on getting crazier. It is not about keeping kids from transitioning. It is not about building safeguards that are common sense to keep people from making a mistake. It is about actively cracking down on the rights and freedom of adults, adults who want to and are very aware of the fact that they are trans and are transitioning willingly and consensually. More often than not, with the support and guidance of doctors and mental health professionals.
For PC, we represent federal employees and applicants, and I've had various PREA cases before. I'm not giving legal advice, but I want to explain what's happening because I think it affects a lot of people, the people we lock up, and frankly says a lot about what our own government is willing to do in our names. Here's the short version. PREA was passed to reduce sexual abuse in prisons and jails. In 2012, DOJ added common sense rules at the BOP. They're going to screen for the risk. They're going to house vulnerable folks more safely. They're going to limit cross-gender strip and cavity searches. They're going to train staff not to bait or humiliate people. Well, now it's changed. A Trump executive order says trans protections have to go.
It's so mask off. There's no way to interpret this as a reasonable person other than Trump wants to encourage trans people to be sexually assaulted and raped in prisons. A place where you cannot choose to be, right? Transphobes often like to argue, well, if you don't like this, then don't be where we are, trans people. And it's well, trans people don't get to choose whether or not they're in prison. If you're in prison and you're trans, you don't get to leave. So clearly there needs to be some accommodation made for the existence of trans people in the prison system.
And this memo tells PREA auditors, until we update the standards, ignore the parts of PREA that protect trans and intersex people. PREA is still the law. The rulemaking isn't done. Yet DOJ is telling its own people in writing to disregard the law for a certain group. Can we say lawsuits? And let's be clear about what that group is. Trans.
Man, listen, if any lawyers start hitting you up, if you're trans on the internet, you're getting hit up by lawyers listen, we got an opportunity, you better take them up on it. There might be some real money to be made off of this bullshit. If you're trans and you get we get a big army of really good lawyers, I feel like there is some discrimination lawsuits to be won here.
people. Yes, but it's also intersex people, which are folks born with chromosomes, hormones, or anatomy that doesn't fit nearly into male or female. Yes, that happens. They're already facing staggering levels of violence behind bars. DOJ's own data shows trans prisoners experience sexual assault at more than 12 times the rate of other prisoners. Other surveys say
this is very true, and it's not all that dissimilar to the real world outside of prison. A lot of people who have the prerogative to push hate towards trans people have created a stereotype of trans people that they are predators that want to invade women's spaces like locker rooms and bathrooms and whatnot. And, you know, the implication is that trans women in particular are either partially or fully men, and that men, in most people's mind, are more predatory than women. I think that's a stereotype we can all agree is the case. And so the idea is that trans people are, or trans women in particular, are actively a danger to the women that they're around in these women's spaces. And so logically, going off of that list of assumptions, it makes sense that people would fall for this conspiracy, that trans people are a threat to cis women. But the fact is, trans women in particular are sexually assaulted and raped at a far higher rate than, like, magnitudes more than any trans woman is represented as sexually assaulting or harassing or anything like that, or raping or anything along those lines, a cis woman in all of the crime data. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it is actually statistically more common that cis women per capita are more likely to commit violence against a trans woman than a trans woman against a cis woman. And yes, I said per capita, accounting for the fact that trans people are less common than cis women.
Over half have been sexually assaulted during their current sentence. And DOJ's solution is remove the guardrails? Even though they're 12 times more likely, that's just common sense, right? The memo targets rules that require facilities to consider whether someone is trans or intersex when assessing risk. It targets rules that let vulnerable prisoners shower separately so they're not open targets. It targets limits on cross-gender strip searches. It targets training that tells staff to treat these prisoners with basic dignity. And then we hear, well, this is about protecting women, or we're restoring common sense.
No, it's
women?
not.
Do you want these protections to go away? Because the policy...
Yeah, women do not want these protections to go away, especially not women who are incarcerated. Absolutely not. Because, believe it or not, rape is still a massive problem in women's prisons. Although, to be fair, more often than not, it is the guards or COs or even the warden who are perpetuating it more so than other prisoners, but it still happens, just like in the male units. That still happens, just the same thing. Yeah, you're not going to see a lot of incarcerated or unincarcerated women that are backing this. I'm not going to lie, this is one of the few cases in which I think even a lot of people who are pretty iffy on trans people and whether or not they see them as valid or even good, I feel like a lot of people might be like, ooh, I don't know about this. This is pretty bad. I don't even think most transphobes that are not at least fully hateful would back something like this. Like, no one is pro-rape. I mean, there are certain people that are pro-rape, but I feel like 99% of people aren't. This is a bad look. Sorry, I accidentally hit play. This is a really bad look. Like, ridiculously bad. Like, a massive transphobe L on the optics level, I think.
Easier to strip a trans woman naked in front of men, easier to house her in units everyone knows are dangerous for her, and harder to track when abuse is motivated by hatred. Women, do you feel protected by this? It's cruelty dressed up as safety, and I don't care where you fall politically. If you believe in human dignity, this should bother you. It's 12 times more likely. This is just common sense stuff. And if you believe in limited government and rule of law, this should also really bother you because it's still the law, and they're just trying to ignore the law. The only sliver of hope is these changes aren't final. There has to be a public comment process. Jurisdictions can choose to keep protections. Courts have already intervened on some of this, but none of that matters if you don't understand what's going on. If you're angry, that's not you being too sensitive. That's a healthy reaction to your government playing games with sexual violence, because they're targeting people.
And the fact that they explicitly say it's targeting trans people, they are removing the protections for specifically trans people. You could not make a more brazen and clear, loud statement that you are opposed to the safety of trans people than that.
I'll leave you with a few questions to wrestle with. If DOJ could tell its own auditors to ignore parts of a prison rape law for a group it doesn't like, what stops it from doing that to anyone else next? If you call yourself pro-family or pro-life, are you okay with a system that shrugs at rape as long as you don't relate to the victim. I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah, right? We should not encourage this. 12 times, it's common sense, give protections. And if staff are being pushed to violate PREA, what does that do to the integrity of the whole system? And if you work in and around these facilities, what are you being told right now? How does that line up with the law you're actually sworn to uphold? Please don't actually answer that. Or if you do, be very, very cautious and make sure it can't be traced back to you. Thank you, everybody, for your support. What do you think of all this? Please let us know. Take care and have a great day.
I understand why people in my chat have been begging me to cover this, because that's really scary. I can only imagine how scary it is if you've got trans friends that are incarcerated and you're hearing this news. Like, that's distressing. And man, I'm pretty sure there is a pretty significant incarcerated trans population, right? Not because of violent crime. In fact, trans people commit far less violent crime than most demographics, actually. But the majority of our prisons are filled up with non-violent drug offenders anyway, which, of course, is made up of a decent amount of trans people. It's really, really bad. And, man, I don't know. I do think that if this story actually gets enough eyes on it, there's a good chance that the broader normie population is going to see this as a pretty unacceptable attack on trans people. Like, not because they're trans people, but because the weapon that's being used against trans people is rape. I know that the internet and the chuds here might make this seem like the opposite is true, but most people do not like rape, no matter what. So I think there is a bit of a silver lining to this situation at the end of the day. But this just shows how badly we need to fight and fight hard to get this administration out of power. If we can get better people in charge, then we can actually move to repair our country and restore the rights that have been lost over the last year. Anyway, folks, if you enjoyed this video and you want to support it so it can get out in front of more people and be seen by more people, we can spread awareness, leave a like on it. It really helps a lot. It tells the YouTube algorithm this video is good and to push it out to more people. Comment down below to do the same. If you don't know what to say, comment fish, as that will help to boost the video, and it's a code word that tells me you watched all the way to the end. On top of that, if you want to see more from me in the future and you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell icon. And join the fan Discord. It's linked down below in the description. It's the main hub of my community and fan base. I hope to see you around. But until then, I hope to see you again in the next one. Thank you for watching.